In episode 4, we discussed how human nature reacts to scarcity by initiating conflict. After all, if there's not enough of a certain commodity to go around, people are going to fight over it. This has been true of many things, from food to land to Cabbage Patch Kids. We've also more specifically noted how energy scarcity has been responsible for a lot of death and destruction. But what would happen if we had an opposite energy situation? That is, how would people behave if energy was abundant?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Today's discussion can be handled in two phases. First, is it even realistically possible to have abundant energy, let alone abundant renewable energy? Elon certainly thinks so.
It's worth noting, I'm not sure if people are aware of this, but the world could be powered many times over by solar if you had enough battery capacity to pair with it. Like, you could power the entire United States with about, let's say, 150 to 200 square kilometers of solar panels. The entire United States. Take a corner of Utah.
In fact, more recently in August 2022, Elon penned an essay which was published in the magazine China Cyberspace. In it, he wrote, "The sun is like a giant fusion generator from which mankind currently exploits a tiny amount of energy. In the long run, solar energy will become the main source of energy for human civilization." Now, my point in referencing these things is not to prove that Elon is right, because I have not even remotely done the calculations myself. Rather, it's to show that he believes he is right. Nor do I know at what point he reached the firm conclusion that solar and renewables could provide all our energy needs. I can only surmise that, starting at least around the time he was in college, he has believed it would eventually be possible for our economies to switch over to renewable energy. Not because the technologies at the time were necessarily capable of making renewable energy a feasible primary source of energy, but just because it was within the realm of possibility. In fact, just to highlight how little renewable energy contributed to U.S. energy consumption in 1994, or right around the time that Elon was getting out of college, renewables provided only 7% of U.S. energy needs, with hydroelectric sources making up about half of that. At that time, solar made up less than 0.1%, so little that it didn't even rate a mention in the paragraph. By the way, as of 2020, renewables accounted for over 12.6% of all the energy consumed in the U.S., of which solar was 10.7%. My point in mentioning these statistics is to provide context. I think it's safe to say that at the time he made his vow to change the world, Elon knew, at least in general terms, that renewables had a long way to go before they would ever replace fossil fuels. In 2023, replacing fossil fuels is still a huge monumental challenge. In 1994, it must have seemed nearly impossible. But since when has Elon ever gone the easy route? To Elon, it was probably enough that renewables were the obvious way to go, the only way to go. It was therefore going to be worth the colossal effort that it most certainly would take to get there. That now brings us to what Elon probably imagined when he was specifically contemplating energy. If you can somehow tap into abundant renewable energy, how would that change society? Exactly what would the benefits be? Let's face it, our quality of life is so much better than it's ever been historically. By any measure, the average person in a modern industrialized country has comforts that even royalty never used to have. And many of those comforts and conveniences are made possible through fossil fuel energy. And we use a lot. The average American uses nearly 100 times more electricity than the average Haitian, while the average UK citizen uses more than 30 times the average Nigerian. We have built for ourselves a high energy consumption world. We are in the habit of using a lot, whether right or wrong, and we don't want to go back to the way it was before. I'm guessing that Elon went through this mental exercise and came to the conclusion that of all the things he could do, helping provide abundant, clean, renewable energy was one of the most fundamental things needed to make the quality of life better for everyone, and that life would improve in many different ways. At the individual level, if there's abundant energy, it means your energy bills are dramatically lower. The single highest municipal energy expense is water pumping, so water would be cheaper, and it would be super cheap for you to get from place to place. These savings would be enjoyed by all industries too. Abundant energy means farmers could grow food more cheaply and have cheaper water for irrigation. This would be true anywhere in the world, because with cheap energy, desalination plants could now be built and operated affordably. Factories could make consumer goods for less because raw materials could be processed, transported, and manufactured for less. So, prices for all finished products would also go down. But the benefits of abundant energy don't stop there. The world would also be much cleaner. With enough energy, for instance, we could affordably get rid of waste by breaking it down to the molecular level, reducing landfill waste. We have the tech to do that right now, but it's too expensive to use. Recycling would also be cheaper. Even healthcare. Taxes would also go down. Basically, cheap energy affects everything in the modern world because we have built a high energy consumption world. If energy is a lot cheaper, everything is a lot cheaper. Overall, in an age of abundant energy, the standard of living would go up across all strata of society, while the cost of living would miraculously plummet. And that brings us to the question that we raised earlier in this episode. How would human behavior change if energy was no longer a problem? A future worth waiting for. Those are Elon's own words, and that's what he has been building towards this whole time. In episode 4, we discussed how scarcity breeds conflict. So, what happens when there is abundance instead? Now, this is new territory because, as far as I know, no really large society or civilization has ever enjoyed such circumstances. That's why we have to turn to speculative reason. To be clear, I have to believe that Elon anticipates definite political benefits as well in an age of energy abundance. Most of all, there might very well be no more oil wars. This is such an obvious benefit that I figure there's no way he could have overlooked it, even though I haven't yet found any such statements by him. But logically, it makes sense that when energy is cheap and plentiful, it should take away a lot of incentive to fight. And I said a lot of incentive, not all. But here's another thing. Even if governments did want to get into a war for some reason, would the people be willing to support it? With abundant energy around the world and better communications to keep people informed, I think the people would be very reluctant to support a war because it just wouldn't make much sense. I mean, what would you be trying to get that you didn't already have? Overall, I think it would be much harder in an abundant future to get the people riled up about a foreign threat when they can't see a reason to fight. Interestingly, Elon cites Star Trek as one of his early influences. In that futuristic world, the nations of Earth aren't fighting each other anymore, nor is there apparently any hunger or poverty.
I certainly like Star Trek because that actually shows more of a utopian future. It's not like things aren't horrible in the future. It's there's so many bloody post-apocalyptic futures. Okay, can we have one that's nice? Just a few. So I like that about Star Trek.
Now, clearly, I don't know what was going on in Elon's mind, nor do I want to assume that his main inspiration was the utopia portrayed in Star Trek. But given his own statements about abundance, I have to think he must have asked himself, what changes do we need to make to build a world like that? To Elon, energy at the very least was one of the essential keys to a brighter future. Again, we can't change human nature, not yet anyway, but it's conceivable that our environment and physical circumstances can be altered in such a way that it's maximally conducive to positive human behavior. I think this is essentially how Elon's reasoning went when he pondered the possibilities so long ago. Now, it's possible that all this is wrong. Even if we have energy abundance, maybe that won't have the desired effects that we've been discussing here. Maybe it won't bring political peace. But I'm willing to bet that Elon believes it will, or he wouldn't be trying so hard to make it happen. So, those are my thoughts on what Elon was probably thinking way back in college. and all he needed was the right opportunity to get the ball rolling.